The Clay Slide by the Kalapuya by Howard W. Robertson. The ineffable voices, the living and non-living, the animate or inanimate, the essentially spiritual, the utterly mysterious, the fractally fascinating sounds that linger in the shade, here at the energetic end of summer, at a time when carbon dioxide and methane levels have started to resemble those of 55 million years ago, after comparable quantities of greenhouse gases entered the atmosphere and caused a worldwide heat wave that lasted over 200,000 years. Of the power of the world's continuous beginning, of the ungraspable, holiest phantom calling to us from the rapids and causing us to reflect on the life of the universe and these secret thoughts that run over things sacred, profane, clean, obscene, light or grave, and each without all shame or blame, the ineffable voices of the living river, of the ceaselessly flowing entropy reduction that generally and joyfully characterizes all forms of life, of the primal attraction to watery edges we inherit from our origins 150,000 brief years ago, back in Africa's Rift Valley, where our ancestors foraged along the shore for fish, mollusks, birds, crustaceans, and mammals, of this coming from melted snow and ice and this flashing past dark boulders or shadowy trout as the stream acts out what has happened to it, and what it will do in its randomly sensitive dependence on so many initial conditions, of the perpetual peace inspiriting this ancient tumult of pristine flux, of the living river, declaims so purely, stands so phenomenally beyond, behind, and within the passing of immediate things, infuse us now so unconsciously with inspiring bagatelles of transient experience, suggests so melodiously the immanence that is real yet forever to be realized, is the remotest possibility and the most immediate fact, that gives meaning to everything transitory but still defies our comprehension, the mystical transcendence whose conceptual expression remains our hopeless quest, expounds so profoundly on the soul's poise, on its insouciance, its sureness, its sweetness, its cunning as the black river pours over the split rocks, making savage rainbows of spray. Remind us so reverently of Hildegard of Bingen and of the divine sparkling of waters, so magnanimously, so independently, so simply of the process of optimal harmonization with the key of the universe and with the kami of the high cascades. Oh yes, extemporize so urgently of life as it becomes in the intricate invasions of as, in things unseen, from fecund nil created, declaim so purely, through uranic forest, through maples and ash and nitrogen-fixing alders, through firs and hemlocks and cedars, through the miraculously improbable distribution of molecules that connects these heliotropic woods to the entire terrestrial biosphere, or to the sun and the river of stars by day or by night. This analogy between the biochemical and the astrophysical that proves to be mathematically feasible after all. Through all these spire-like dendrozoic structures based on the carbon-maiden stars and spread in dust and gas throughout the interstellar medium, or the whirling arms of our own and countless other galaxies. The same carbon that provides our planetary life forms the means to encode and transmit our genetic instructions to our own cells and to our varied offspring, whether we be eukaryotes, bacteria, or archaea by domain. Through these thriving descendants of ancestors who started 3 eons ago to practice photosynthesis, utilizing solar energy to take carbon from atmospheric CO2 and synthesize storage sugars, and who began 400 million years back to cooperate symbiotically on dry land with underground mycorrhizal fungi for nitrogen and for precious water during droughts. Through this holy and enchanted landscape where hydrogen from the original cosmogenic explosion rushes molecularly bonded to its derivative oxygen, evoking presence in absence, essence in the void, the subtlest ecstasis and the memorably fugace, the common and inseparable life of the earthly and the heavenly, or more precisely, yet vaguely, something more basic than biota, something beyond life and death, a universal harmony heard beside a river in the mountains through trees, through Uranic forest and chthonic chasm, the cleft in the earth whose verticality now aims us down the tilth toward the subterranean embodiment and enactment of the vastly greater portion of the biosphere here at this place, a couple hundred yards northwest of the junction of Oxbow Road and Three Kings Road off of Highway 139, just past Pioneer Bridge. This local landscape set into motion in the invisible past when a massive clay slide slipped off Tum Tum Ridge down to where the Kalapuya River still sluices through the volcanic mountains. The spectacular pair of vertiginous cliffs whose steep potential points are mindfulness down toward the googleplexes of creatures underneath this elegant A-frame cabin and the expansive deck upon which Hope and I luxuriate, the endless miles of coiled-up gossamer threads of fungal hyphae or root-hugging mycorrhizal arbuscula, and all the nematodes, the springtails, the water bears, the mites, the countless other arthropods, the bacteria, the methanogens, the protozoa, the tough, robust, so adaptable microbes generally, the libidinous earthworms whose cosmic inching works and reshapes this clay soil that slid so far, so fast, so very long ago. Clay being the aperiodic crystal that is able to mutate and self-replicate like double helix DNA, that is chemically reactive with adenosine triphosphate molecules for storing vital energy in living organisms, that was formed within the mantle at high temperature and pressure and brought to the surface by the same churning plate tectonics pushing the continental crusts, that during the meteor bombardment, the volcanic degassing, the cataclysmic rainstorms and intense ultraviolet irradiation of our globe's raw first eon utilized the potent thermal energy from the radioactive magma of the deep subsurface to provide the basic stardust components of our planet, the means to reorganize themselves against the threat of the thermodynamic disorder and evolve into a complex design of living systems that served as a crystalline template for the sequencing of simple proteins and genes, arranging pairs of amino acids or nucleotides into the proper orientation for the biosynthesis of macromolecules, that can incorporate nucleic and amino acids into its own structure to initiate the replication or synthesis functions of those earliest living microbial obligate anaerobes from which we all descend, that provide capacious electrostatically charged surfaces to serve as primitive enzymes, that likely became embedded by RNA-like single-stranded nucleotide chains, was eventually taken over by them, and finally replaced altogether for biocatalytic purposes, that formed the scaffolding with which the bridge of life was built, and that swarms with miracles ultra vires scientiae in its electrochemical interiors, and chthonic chasm, whatever Gaia feels. Metaphorically speaking, of course, using an ancient anthropomorphic eidolon for our little locus of the illimitable, the novelist William Golding suggested to his neighbor chemist James Lovelock in the early 1970s in their quiet Wiltshire village, where the country folk found it obvious that the biosphere was a self-regulating system, keeping all conditions favorable for life over improbable periods of time. The scientist and the literatus thereby collaborating to resurrect an ancient goddess, also known as Gaia, an irresistible divinity personifying the biosphere with its strange property of keeping itself always a fit and comfortable place for living things to affect and inhabit, with its stable recycling of energy and materials among its components at rates controlled by feedback systems, with its gestalt greater than the sum that we question while it works, with its elemental composition similar to the universe as a whole, in which hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon are by far the primary ingredients, with its 8 levels of intricate self-organization from the organelles to biotic entirety, with its abundant flow of energy characterized by a tendency to form itself as it consumes, with its extremely exotic subsurface ecosystems of vast microbial metabolisms powered by the Earth's inner heat independently of the aging sun, with its visceral biological forces in an intimate union with the many fluxes and pools of the global exchange of water, energy, and nutrients between the sunlit surface and the depths, with its Paleozoic stromatolite fossils over 3 billion years old that were left by the archaic photosynthesizers, with its fossilized arbuscular mycorrhizae from 400 million years ago that resemble miniature etched trees, with its green chloroplast organelles that originated in a primordial symbiosis between the cyanobacteria and the eukaryotic organisms, with its microbial majority of life that would and will survive if and when all of us large creatures became or become extinct, but not vice versa, sadly, and with its truly awe-inducing effect on this couple of us vociferous advocates and voracious consumers who have been inspired to love and respect the earth because we are part of it and cannot survive without a healthy planet as our home, who have dedicated ourselves to replacing that destructive reductionist thinking with this holistic compassion, to integrating our socioeconomic well-being with environmental protection, to changing specifically to accredited green power options for household electricity, to installing solar panels on the roof and a solar hot water system, to using energy-efficient appliances and light bulbs, a AAA showerhead, and a tiny fuel-efficient car, to walking, bicycling, or taking public transportation, to calculating our own carbon footprint, to conducting a workplace sustainability audit, and to writing to our politicians about climate change and the right response. We too who lounge on this raft-like deck, temporarily afloat, and marvel at the hummingbird-sized sphinx moth, flitting from blossom to bloom while chipmunks snatch roasted, unsalted peanuts from Hope's lap, and vine maples so imperceptibly continue to turn red at this twist in the scenery that civilized people admire, where birds and small animals withdraw and return to observe us, perhaps knowing in their bones that eternity is beautifully pointless and that the brute facts are more than truth enough. Whatever Gaia feels.